morning, and thank you, Yvonne, for that very kind introduction. As you noted, I am Suzanne Skelly, and I'm the Deputy Director of the United States Integrated Ocean Observing System. I hope to share with you this morning a bit of an introduction to the U.S., excuse me, IUS, and in particular to put emphasis on the connections between U.S. IUS and industry. There was a fair amount of mention yesterday about the Galway statements, lots of prospects for promising collaborations, thank you, across the Atlantic. In addition to the discussion and mention about an integrated Atlantic ocean observing system. And so perhaps today my comments might be some fodder for some continued discussion and ideas about how we might continue to collaborate together. As Yvonne noted, U.S. IUS, as a concept, it's been around since about 1998. However, it was codified in legislation by the U.S. Congress in 2009. And in that, NOAA was designated as the lead federal agency. And NOAA responded in 2007 by creating this program office, of which I'm a part of. The real objective of the program office is to coordinate and liaison between our regional entities and the federal government. The big driver behind establishing IUS was the fact that the U.S. is a maritime nation, and we make significant investments already through our federal agencies in ocean observing. Now that investment takes many different flavors, and the annual investment is on the order of $3.6 billion. But recall that NASA flies many pretty expensive satellites, NOAA flies satellites, we operate ships. National Science Foundation is establishing a pretty expensive ocean observatories initiative. So there's this existing federal investment with the advances in technology, with all of the pressing societal needs. There's a real recognition that we need to take better advantage of that investment. And the driving part behind IUS is to really make that data more interoperable, to make it so that it can be used in other ways than just beyond just the use of the specific agency missions. So I mentioned that those 11 regions, or perhaps I didn't say there were 11, but there are 11 regions. These are non-federal entities that implement IUS in their local, regional, state areas. And they're really the linchpin for IUS in that it's a non-governmental agency. They're non-governmental entities, and they're organized in a variety of different ways. Some are nonprofits, some are organized by memorandum of agreement. They often have a strong link to academia, and they coordinate and partner with industry in their local area. The local footprint is important for us because they are in the best position to identify the needs of the people who live in that area and of the business and the industries who are there. But by having a national program, we're able to ensure some national consistency across all those 11 regions. One of the big key points, if the idea is to integrate this data, then the National Program Office, where I come from, one of its big purposes is to lead that data management. And the data management comes from the fact that we have all these observing systems, right? Satellites are certainly an important piece, and for the terrestrial and the atmospheric observations, they're very important for the oceans as well. But with 70% of the surface being oceans and satellites can only see the surface, we need other types of systems. So in this diagram you can see we've got buoys, we've got gauges, we've got high-frequency radar. We're using tagged marine mammals and fish. The upper right-hand corner is a depiction of our port system. So NOAA operates an integrated system that has multiple different sensors in 23 different ports. It's a partnership with that ports. So the port itself actually procures the equipment, and then NOAA does the maintenance on it. The purpose of that system is to provide mariners exiting and entering the ports with information so they can make those transits safely. In the bottom right-hand, the bottom middle corner there, that's an example of high-frequency radar in Alaska. They have no power grid per se in a lot of areas, so we need different ways of connecting up and powering those systems. All of this really indicates that we need new and different observing platforms and different means of observing. We've got lots of pressing societal needs, and there's a real role for industry to create new technologies and platforms. I'll come back to a couple different technologies later as examples. For data management, each of our 11 regions provides access to data sets from their areas. They have platforms that they operate, which we largely fund from the National Program Office. They make that data available through their own websites, but then we also make it available through our national website. We are sponsoring the development of a sensor observation service as a software language means of making that data interoperable. We're developing 2 different implementations of that, and 6 of our 11 regions have already implemented it, and we're working on getting other federal agencies to adopt that same software standards and formats. So you can access the data through a single portal from our website, which is the last screen shown here. And, yep. I'm going to go now to 4 different examples of how iUse is working in the U.S. And this first example is from our Northeast partner, Syracuse. And what we've got here, right, is a cup of coffee, a buoy, and a fishing vessel. The graph shows the spike in hits to the website of Syracuse. Happens about 4 a.m. And we know from talking to the fishermen and the lobstermen up there that they're hitting the website at 4 a.m. because they're making their go, no-go decisions. They need to know what are the conditions out there now and what are they expected to be. Syracuse provides the real-time data, and they provide models that give them forecasts. You can see the quotes there. The fishermen have really come to rely upon it. And this is a real example of the power of iUse. And it's taking ocean data and putting it into products and making it available for people so they can make decisions that affect their safety, the safety of their crews, and also speaks to their economic efficiency of the trip that day. It may not be worthwhile to spend the fuel to get out to the fishing grounds. The next example comes from our Pacific Northwest. It's a real demonstration of the power of linking researchers to industry. So in 2008, the Whiskey Creek hatchery, oyster hatchery, lost 100% of their set. And they weren't the only ones. Since the 1970s, the industry has been relying upon hatcheries for their seed because the natural stocks are also under a lot of pressure. It's a $273 million a year industry, and they were very, very concerned about their economic viability. They worked closely with the researchers to accelerate that whole process between problem identification, doing the studies, doing the research, and coming up with conclusions. It was an interesting tension because the researchers, of course, wanted to take more time. They wanted to publish papers. They wanted to do a thorough analysis. Not that the thorough analysis wasn't important, but those hatcheries could only sustain themselves but for so long. And that was a good initiator for the researchers, and they actually were able to conclude that there were upwelling conditions, and when there were conditions of persistent winds from the southwest, it made the oceans more acidic. By installing a real-time observing system, they were able to monitor the actual conditions. And so the hatcheries are using that information to time when they put out their seed and when they do their harvest. It's been a really tremendous success story. If we look from the national program, we're always looking at ways of quantifying the benefit of iUse, and this particular one has been really useful for us. Not only we have the science and the industry, but there's also an industry association. So there's a Pacific Shellfish Growers Association. There's also one in the Gulf of Mexico and the East Coast. But the West Coast has been particularly helpful in becoming clear, strong voices with a clear link to economic benefit. This next example highlights the use of a particular technology. So you heard a bit about gliders from the UK perspective yesterday. Here's just a few applications of how they're being used in the United States. In the upper left here, in California, they have something called the California Cooperative Oceanic Fisheries Survey. It's been around since 1949. It started in order to assess the sardine stock. The sardine fishery in California has largely collapsed, but they've maintained those surveys. It's the longest sustained survey. More recently, they've been using gliders because the gliders are able to stay on station much longer. The ships go out quarterly. The gliders are able to stay out longer and do continual surveys. And by doing that, California now has a much better idea of what's happening in their ecosystem, and it gives them better information to manage their living marine resources. On the other side of the coast, in the Atlantic sturgeon is an endangered species, overfished for its caviar. The University of Delaware is using gliders and tags on those fish to track them and to understand them better. We don't know enough about them, and we need that information to better manage the species and reduce the bycatch. This small picture there, 2 years ago there was a huge phytoplankton bloom off the coast of New Jersey. And we see in the Gulf of Mexico it's often associated with outflow from rivers. Rutgers University is one of our Mid-Atlantic partners. They had gliders in the water. They were able to determine that it was not due to outflow from the Hudson River. I think there was just a variety of converging factors that caused the bloom, but it was good to at least be able to eliminate that as a possible source. The next image with the harmful algal blooms, in the Gulf of Mexico, they're using gliders to take samples, and then that data is used to inform harmful algal bloom bulletins, which then go to local communities and can warn people with respiratory problems about the beaches, and also inform shellfish bed closings. Sorry, right. So I was going for the pointer. For hurricane forecasting, gliders are an interesting development, right? It makes sense. In 2010, Hurricane Irene impacted the U.S. East Coast. Rutgers University, again, our Mid-Atlantic partner, happened to have gliders in the water. They were performing different missions, but they were in the water, and they were able to actually document and measure the shift in temperature through the water column. After the event, they did some post-processing analysis and determined that if the sea surface temperature had been informed by the water column temperatures, that the data they had from the gliders, we would have been able to better predict the intensity of the storm. So this is pretty exciting news for them and in the community. They're continuing to work, though, to get the right kind of peer-reviewed journals done and all the science work done to convince the hurricane forecasters that this is really a positive direction to go in. This past fall, to follow up on that work, 15 different organizations had gliders in the water, including 2 from Canada. We didn't have a hurricane, so that's a good thing this year. But they were at least able to demonstrate the capability and the feasibility of having a national glider network. Lots of different organizations. That data was available, though, through a national dissemination point within NOAA, the National Data Buoy Center, which then makes its data available globally through the Global Telecommunications System. Lastly, in the lower right, just a point for you that the gliders are also very useful when sampling in situ the water column for hydrocarbons. They were used during the big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, Deepwater Horizon, and certainly shows a lot of promise off Alaska, both for research and for oil spill. Should that be a problem? High-frequency radar is another technology. And with the high-frequency radar, the U.S. has a national network. It was largely established through investment from the states, operated by our 11 different regions. The national program made a modest investment in order to knit together that whole system into a national network. It provides surface current data. Primary uses at the moment are oil spill response and also search and rescue. So the Coast Guard has determined that if they use the environmental data available from surface currents, they can reduce their search area size by 2/3 after 96 hours. So this has a big impact for reducing the search area size, means less fuel to do the search and higher probability that they'll find the missing person. Several other uses there that you can see. In 2011 at the GEO plenary, they adopted as part of their work plan for 2012 to 2015 the idea to establish a global high-frequency radar network. And the idea there is that it is another observing system, land-based, but goes out into the coastal zone and can monitor and measure the coastal environment. So for USI use, we really address society's needs for information, both our current challenges and our pressing emerging challenges. Industry in this engagement is a key part of that value chain of going from observations to creating information that can inform decision makers. We are always looking to quantify the benefit of eye use. It's not dissimilar to some of the discussion that we've heard the last day or so. It's always important to be able to link right back to what is the outcome, what's the benefit. My program office is doing a marine technology impact study, and the impact study is underway now. The idea is to classify the companies really in the provider section and then in the intermediaries. The end users, those are like the end user benefits. In this example, we have Walmart showing just in that they need the forecast to know when to get their winter clothing, for example, into their stores on time. Once a year, we hold an industry workshop. In 2014, it'll be in the spring in New York City. We're targeting the intermediaries that provide products for the reinsurance industry. They have a growing concern with environmental risk, and there are companies out there who package products that are using eye-use products, although they don't necessarily know it. So we're looking to raise awareness and to better inform our future progress of where we need to go. So the industry study that I mentioned is available on this website. In addition to getting information about those companies, their size, their revenue, their export growth potential, and their numbers of employees, we're looking to also gain from them how eye-use has helped them and how we might help them going forward. So in conclusion, the public-private partnership of eye-use is working. Industry is a very important component of that. Going from the full chain from ocean observations through to data management, modeling analysis, and creating decision products that inform and keep the public safe and out of harm's way is a key part of what eye-use is doing. It's working now in the U.S., and we look forward to future collaborations with Ireland and with others in the EU. Thank you.